Hello and good afternoon. It is Tuesday, October 29th. We are 2 days from Spooky Night, and tomorrow is the season finale, episodes 8 and 9 of Agatha All Along, and I can't wait. Yeah, I'm a nerd. I am that developer dad. People that know me call me Rob, and we're building .NET apps. This week, and the tail end of last week, has been focused less on an application and more a component or set of components that we can use when we need to evaluate rules against instances of some object. Basically, a validation engine with a rules execution utility sitting in the core of that engine, but also external to it, because we might want to be able to evaluate rules for reasons other than validation at some point. So I took the rules evaluation thing and turned that into a utility module. The validation engine is mostly fleshed out. We did the markdown documentation of it this morning and set up the interface, the iValidator interface, and we created a implementation of the iValidator. We set up the return type, this validation result, which when let's say we've got a manager that's executing a use case and it's just received the data that describes the thing that needs to be validated. It needs to make sure that that data is in a state that is correct for the activity that the use case implements. So we need to pass that payload into the validator with an identifier of which activity we're performing. And I've made this nullable. And then, of course, if that comes in as unspecified or null, I default that out to all. So what it'll do is it'll run all the basic validations. And I feel like I should probably... I might have to rethink that. That might be a mistake, allowing a null activity context there. But that's fine. What it does is it goes out and it finds all of the rules that apply to that particular thing that we're validating for the process that we want to execute against it. And then it runs all of those rules, and as it finds rules that are broken, the validation rule that's being run will have an error message attached to it that gets added to this validation result and eventually sent back to the manager class. So all very nice and flexible. And of course, if there are no rule sets, if the validator cannot find a set of rules for the rule set key, it returns a warning saying the subject instance, no rules have been defined for this activity on this type. And otherwise it goes through, runs all the rules, and returns our result. So we need to populate those rule sets, because right now, if we try to spin this up, it's not going to have any rule sets defined for, well, anything. Excuse me. Now, I think before I dive into starting to implement any kind of access logic, or even define the contracts that a RulesAccess component would have, I feel like I should probably stand up some tests on this on the validation engine. So let's go ahead and we'll add a project reference to devdad validation engine, and we'll probably need a reference to the rules utility as well. And unit test 1 CS. Let's rename this file to validation tests. And let's think of some of the scenarios that we've already got in front of us. I can close out these property errors and the result, the rule, and iSimple rule, and all of these things. And let's take a look at the logic inside this validate thing. And also we can look at the logic around a validation rule. So validate T accepts a payload and some activity context. All right, now what happens if there is not a rule set for that combination of type and activity? Well, we see that it adds a property error and returns our result. So the first test I want to write, validate test, pass unknown, pass subject and activity, no rule set, expect warning. So let's do this. Range, act, assert, I, validator, class under test, equals a new validator. Now we need a validation subject, and right now I'm just going to say object. And equals new object, string, activity name equals test activity. Now we're going to need an actual materialized class for this validation subject. So I am going to new folder, test support, and add a new file, sample class. Oops, needs to be a class library or a class. And I'm going to call it sample. Call it test sample class. All right, and our test sample class needs a couple of properties. Prop, string, name equals string.empty. Prop, date time, birth date, public int age is I don't like the way it's doing datetime.now.year minus birthdate.year. That's not super accurate. I've got in my sample console a better way of doing that. So let's just grab this, paste it here, save it. All right, so we've got all this stuff. And instead of an object of validation subject, it's going to be a test sample class. And let's just call it subject. Equals new O. And we have to tell it to use the test support namespace. There we go. Name. Object. It's not a new object. There. String activity name equals test activity. And var result equals class under test, validate subject activity name. And assert that the result contains at least one property error that is of type, that is a warning. And we'll say assert.contains result errors. Okay, save it. We'll come over to our test lab, and we'll need to rebuild the solution to get that test to show up. And take a little sippy poo of coffee. Here we go. Validation engine tests. And unit test 1. I really ought to rename this. I'm going to do that right now so I don't forget. Rename symbol. Validate tests. Save that. And I am going to need to refresh. Here we go. We have one validate test right now. Let's just run it, and this should pass. If it doesn't, I'll be pleasantly surprised. Because, yeah, you don't always want your tests to pass the first time. If it does, you best step through it and make sure you're actually inspecting things. Hey, what's up, Austin? Why is this not running? It's being weird. Here we go. It's stepping in. Here we go. Here's our validator. Now we can step, step, step. Step over, do the assertion, Stack Overflow exception. Okay, so it's throwing an error. Ah, right on. So let's see what's going on here. I probably screwed this up. So let's come here. Oh, you goose. Carry on. I see what I'm doing. It's getting into an infinite loop here because the read-only collection property errors says to return itself. Of course, that's not going to work. Errors dot as read-only. Save. Let's try running the test again. Engage. Okay, and this time it failed. Actually, not a bad thing. And let's see if it actually shows us the error message. Here we go. Filter not matched in collection. Okay. So I'm guessing this assert.contains doesn't actually do what I want it to. So what I want to do is say assert.true. And I want to say result.errors.any error. For each error, evaluate e.severity equals property error severity.warning. What's all this complaining about? Yeah, whatever. Do I have Discord? As a human being, yes. As a content creator under the persona of that developer dad, I do, but I'm not using it yet on purpose. I think what I'm going to do is int warning count equals, and what I'm going to do is this. No, it's not as pretty as I thought it'd be. Let's pull this back. Result.errors.count. Pop this down here. Give that a new line. And come back this way. There we go. Assert.true. Warning count is greater than or equal to 1. Save. All right, let's try running this again. Okay. So that came out false. And that means we need to debug this thing. So let's debug. Whoops, that was run it with coverage. Not what I wanted to do. Stop. Debug. Here we go. Class under test is a new validator, so we'll step over that. We're good. Sample class subject, good. The activity is test activity. And let's step into the validate method. So here's our result. String rule set key. Our rule set key is test sample class pipe test activity. Step. Result.add error, new property error. Result. Now let's take a look in here. We've got that property error. Okay, that's going in as an error. So that means I've got a problem in my property error constructor. So we're getting closer. Yes, I know it failed. Go away. So we got to come into the validator and come into the property error constructor. And of course, I'm accepting property error severity as a constructor property, but never setting it. Save. Not sure I like that. I feel like I should be doing init on those. And can I check out the website design for the hosting company real quick? Yeah, give me a second. Let me get this test passing, and then I can divert for a moment. Now, I'm not a UX guy. I am not a UX expert by any stretch of the imagination. All right, and let's try running this again. Now that I think I have my constructors all constructing right and all that good stuff, and that passes, and let's run all of our tests. And we should be good. All right, cool. Yeah, I can take a look at the site design for that very, very quickly. I'll open it up on my other screen. So I need a new Safari window. What's the URL, Austin? Domain, I just got to add a new file real quick. Yeah, man. Yeah, I'm going to keep going with what I'm doing. And then once you post the URL, I'll take a peek at it. Now, keep in mind, I don't speak Node. And I've got a mild allergy to JavaScript. It makes me break out in defects. And eventually, if I'm exposed to it for too long, it makes me break out in cursing. All right, so validate test, pass subject and activity, no rule set, expect warning. So, what we need to do next is get a way to inject some rules into our validator class. So we could, okay, just made the design and then you'll do the node stuff later. Yeah, man. Do you have a way of sharing the URL? Oh, okay, you got to add the new file. Oh, gosh. You know what? If you type, word and then space and then the word dot and then the word and then a space and then, the com or whatever, if you Greek out the, if you munge the URL, you'll get past the filter in Twitch. Is there a way I can allow? No. Mischief.net/hosting. Let me take a look real quick. myschif.net/hosting. Crafted service host. You know what? I dig this, man. I really like that. You mind if I pull it into the share? Because I won't pull it into the screen share unless you say it's okay. So let me talk about this real quick, just from an aesthetics point of view. And where the hell did it go? Where's my Safari window? Here it is. All right, so this is the website that Austin the golfer is building, and I got to pull this down because I'm only sharing a section of my screen here, and I'll hide the URL. Now, what I really, really, really like about this is your palette is basically 1, 2, 3 colors? 4 colors. So you got this background, you've got your main white text, You've got a darkened shade of the background, which I believe is probably the same hue. It's just got lower brightness and maybe a lower saturation. So all three of these blues are probably the same hue, just with different saturations and brightnesses. And of course, you've got your white. I love the 8-bit font. That 8-bit font just tickles my Gen X soul. And like, we'll scroll down. It's super clean. It's got like, oh, that's neat. You got a little bit of a gradient on your hover items. So that's cool. And then, of course, basic, standard, pro. This is really nice, man. Like, I love the way this looks. You might consider bringing the Order Now font into the same family, unless that 8-bit font at that 12-point font type looks like hot garbage. But, I mean, the things that I see that I would change are literally nitpicks. Like, literally nitpicks. Another thing, since you're going to be changing it, is I would bump the top margin on these buttons by maybe half a relative EM. Just to push a little bit of vertical space between the word storage and your button. But other than that, I mean, this is tidy and fast. Like, that's really nice. Develop, let's see, web inspector. Now, you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this open in Edge. And let's talk a little bit about loading times and all that other good stuff. That's really attractive layout, dude. Like, it's smooth, it's soothing, clean, super clean. And I just updated my Mac's operating system last night. And things are still giving their heads a shake. Come on, wake up. I can't wait until this election is over so I can stop seeing things about those people. Especially one of them. Because at risk of alienating my viewers, I'm really, really sick of that man. I'm really, really sick of seeing that dude everywhere I go on the internet. So let's... Come on, give me the dev tools. Extensions, more tools, developer tools. I had the wrong keystroke combination. So let's take a look at the network on this thing. And what I want to do is I'm going to pull this over here. I'm going to shrink this down over like this. And let's get a network log. Holy smokes, dude. That's fast. Let's do a hard refresh on this. Okay, so I'm going to go R. Damn, dude. 60 milliseconds. That's impressive. That's really, really impressive. Okay, I don't see the updated order now button, but you know what? Like I said, that's splitting hairs. And it looks like you bumped the top margin on those buttons by a little bit, like I said. How does the additional vertical space around it, around your order now buttons, how does that feel to you? Oh, I like the very subtle animations on the mouse over on this stuff too. Now, something you might want to think about is watch the animation on the R features content cards, because when a UI element animates like that, people are going to expect some kind of interactivity. You know what I mean? Now, it's fine down when you're under the pricing plans. But up under the instance setup, features, okay. Yeah, animation tends to suggest that you're hovering over some kind of interactive feature. So when you add the gradient animation on mouse over in the on your header there, that suggests it's going to do something when I click on it. And I understand About Us, features, pricing, support. Those are probably all relying on you building out the whatever you're using for routing on the server. Oh no, you're just bouncing down to anchors and stuff, so that's fine. But these info cards, I really like the responsive layout too. That's pretty nice. But yeah, with these guys, I might reconsider that animation there, just because it to me, it makes me think, oh, what happens if I click? Nothing. What's going on? I'm clicking, but nothing's happening. And then, of course, down here on the order now, it kind of works there. Like, and I don't mean functionally or non-functionally, but the growth animation you've got there is a nice subtle touch that is going to draw the eye to where the mouse is going. Whereas up here, it suggests that something's going to happen. That oh, there we go. I see the fonts now. That actually is pretty cool. Is that a small radial gradient in that button, dude? Oh, that's sweet. That's really nice. This is sharp, dude. This is some really, really solid design. And like I was saying, like this stuff, I'm picking nits here. I'm actually somewhat envious. How much of this is just pure CSS and HTML? I'm guessing you're using Flexbox for this. I'm going to cheat. Oh, you're using CSS Grid. Features-grid. Okay, that's that. Oh, no, it's a Flexbox. And wrap, justify space around. Gap is 20 pixels. Dude, this is sexy, man. This is really nice. Excuse me. Yeah, that's very attractive. Yeah, good stuff. I dig it. I suppose I should if you bear with me. Oh, no, that's the SQL project. I don't care about that. I need to go to the Azure portal. Log in as me. That does look really, really nice. How's it going, Crypto? And let's go here. You showed me yours. I should probably show you mine that's under development. Right now I'm using an Azure SQL database on the back end, and it tends to go to sleep after periods of inactivity to save me money. I'm glad it goes to sleep, because otherwise it would be costing me almost $400 a month to run it. So before I do a soft launch of this thing, I need to cut over to use a less expensive storage mechanism. Now, for some reason, the Azure portal is being slow. So here's... Oh, dang blast it. Rob, you goon. Here we go. Let's see. I'll let that do its thing while I think about validation rules and stuff. Yeah, I need to stand up a paid version of the Azure App Service and cut over to using Azure Table Storage instead of SQL database, because table storage is free, or not free, but it's virtually free for the amount of data that I'll be storing. And wow, this thing is just taking its time. Here it comes. All right. Let me sign in. There's that. Off it goes. And yeah, this whole thing, it's been idle for like a week. So it's slower than slow. If you bear with me for a minute, I'm actually going to do a be right back. While this thing gives its head a shake. Here we go. It's trying to load. Yeah. Give me a minute. I'll be right back. And when I come back, I'll do a quick rip through the product that I'm getting ready to launch that spawned the need for an administrative subsystem, that spawned the need for a rules engine and a validation engine, and the code that I'm working on right here. But I'm going to take a short pause for like a minute or two at most, and then I'll be back momentarily. All right. So here is the thing I've been working on. And I can close down the Azure tab. So it's the DM's familiar. And essentially what it started off as just an example of how I write, how I design and create software systems. Because that was my primary reason for setting up that developer dad and all this stuff and starting to create content was I got laid off, and while I'm looking for a new employer, I figured, hey, you know what? Why not share some of the stuff I've learned? So I started streaming as I built software, and then I needed an example for how I go about designing and executing software. And I realized, you know what, when I'm running a D&D game and my players ask me, so like, what's the blacksmith's name? Or, you know, tell me more about the barkeeper. And they want to have conversations about these common townsfolk. They want to have conversations with them at the gaming table. And I haven't thought this stuff up in advance. It really screws up the flow of the D&D session for me to just like sit there scratching my head trying to come up with stuff on the fly. So I was like, well, what if I just load up some lists and write a program to pick random aspects from those lists and then feed the random stuff to an AI. So like, let's say they're in town, they're on their way to a blacksmith, and I really ought to sort this list, who is definitely not retired, but we don't know anything else about him. So we've got a female half-elf blacksmith. This is all just like virtual dice that gets rolled. And then it's like I could really use some extra information. So Leora Voss is the blacksmith that they're about to meet. Here's a brief description, her personality, and this is kind of how she grew up. Currently a blacksmith. Is just some hints for me as a dungeon master to give that character to breathe some life into that character. So I created this and showed it off to some of my players and some of the other folks at the game shop that I play at, and they were like, holy cow, man, I want this. I'd pay for this. So I was like, all right, so how do I turn it into a product? Well, I'm going to need a way to take their money and all of this stuff, and that means either I have to write a whole bunch of complicated e-commerce code, or I have to go to an external third party to handle all that crap. And I don't want to write e-com code that has to store credit cards securely and transmit them to payment processors and deal with sales tax and all the, oh my God, what a pain in the butt that stuff is. So I'm going to use a third party for that. And because going with a third party store, I could get people signing up for this thing at 3 a.m. my time, and I like to sleep. And I like to go out and do stuff, so I don't want to have to be sitting at my desk ready to manually create the user account and provision their quotas and all of that stuff. So I'm building this system, which led me to, gosh, I need to be able to validate subscription change requests as they come in before I process them, which led me to building a rules engine, or a rules utility, and a validation engine wrapped around that rules utility. And so here I am today. But yeah, that's the current feature set for the thing that I've built. And it's about there in terms of where I want this feature to be. I'd like to expand the AI prompt a little bit so that it's a little more descriptive. But other than that, I'm happy with it, and I've got a ton of other features in mind that I want to add to this thing over time. Once I've eaten my vegetables and gotten this bloody admin system together and gotten this thing hosted in a way that doesn't take a week and a half to load. So yeah, that's what I'm doing. But I really, really love the simplicity of the website you shared, Austin. It's very pretty. I gotta say, you did really good with that. So back to validation. All right. So over here in my validator tests, or my validate test, we're testing to see what happens when I pass a subject in with a test activity that there aren't any rules for it. There's no rule set for this combination of subject and activity. So we want to make sure that we get a warning back that a rule set couldn't be found. And that's working. So what happens when public void test validate test pass subject and activity rule set exists pass. I'm going to change pass valid subject rule set exists expect is valid true. So we'll just set up a range act assert. I'm going to grab my test sample class, my subject, and my activity name. And we can grab this class under test, same thing as before. Act is, this is all virtually the same. So I'm just going to grab the whole darn thing, paste it in here, fix the indentation, and I'm going to change warning count, rename symbol to error count. Actually, no. Bool expected is valid equals true. We'll put that up under a range. Bool actual is valid equals result.isValid. Assert.equal expected and actual. This guy's gonna fail miserably. So let's refresh. Just to pull the new test in. And let's just run all of these. And for some reason, the is valid came back as true. Oh. Yeah, so expect is valid equal to be true. Well, that should not be the case. Because I know that is valid should not be true, because when just executing this as is, we should be getting at least one warning back. Maybe we should take a look at is valid. Ah. So here's the deal. Is valid basically means the process, whatever process we're validating our object for, can continue. No errors. However, in the scenario that we've got here, we're coming back with warnings. So is valid isn't really all that accurate. How can I express this in a better way? I don't know why my robot goes off like that sometimes. It's a silly thing. Oh, this view isn't even using the robot. Over here. Hey, follow me. It's gooning. All right. Public bool has warnings. Now, I'm going to do a now let's just do this. Has warnings. Errors.count is greater than 0. Let's come back over to validation tests. And also result.hasWarnings equals false. And I'm going to surround that expression in parentheses to turn it into a complete expression. That's optional. I just do it for readability. So let's save and try rerunning these again. And our values differ. The actual value is false because our result has warnings on it, because it can't find a rule set for test sample class undergoing a test activity. And that brings us to over here with that to-do that I added this morning, we need to populate the rule sets with rule definitions that come from somewhere. Let's start setting that up. We're not going to implement the whole thing this afternoon, but we're at least going to get a start on this. So I need to add a new project, and it's going to be a class library, and it is going to be devdad dot RulesAccess dot abstractions. And we're going to rename this to RulesAccess and turn it into an interface. Access. Save. And it is going to return, or we're going to need to declare a new class, and it will be a rule description. No, I'm going to call it rule definition. I'm also going to have a validation rule definition. Now, RulesAccess is going to say we're going to have an enumerable of t filter rules of t and I'll take a look at the updated site in a few minutes, Austin. Right now, string subject type name. And it's not going to be where T is a rule definition. And you know what? I'm just going to say load. Okay. And let's see here. Validation rule definition has string. Actually, let's do it this way. Prop. Activity. String. Activity. Context. Describes. No, it doesn't describe, it identifies the activity that associated rule applies to. We're gonna let that be. Are we gonna let that be nullable? No. I'm also gonna make this a record. We're also going to have public string, excuse me, failure message. And these are going to be in nits. And validation rules that are actually executed against some object, I'm going to say are going to be errors by default. Provides the error message to add to a property error when the subject fails the rule. And then finally, prop rule definition rule definition. This also will be init. We need a empty constructor and a populated constructor. Validation rule definition. Prop. String. And subject type. Name. Comes from rule definition.subject type name. Now, I need to set up rule definition. And for now, it's going to have the same properties as the rule definition that lives over in the rules utility. But because this is it's not going to be the storage model, but it's going to be the output of the resource access module. I actually want to copy and paste this definition. Because if I use the exact same class, like if I set up a shared models class, and then I need the storage model to look a little bit different from the logic, from the model that the logic components use, I'm going to have to propagate all of the extra properties that I need to keep track of it in storage down into the logic models, and then they're going to start getting used for other things, and it's just going to turn into a big mess. And then I'm going to have like properties that are used sometimes but not others, and yuck. It's better to have, for our resource access components should expose their own public versions of the resources that they control or that they manage. So validation rule definition, we've got a potential uh-oh in here. And let's go ahead and make these nullable. There we go, and that cleans that up. And this is just used for serialization, or deserialization, I should say. And here's that. And our rule definition is good. Excuse me. And let me come up to the rules utility once again. Grab this rule definition, and I've actually defined the empty constructor, or the default constructor, and the stringly typed constructor. And I want to drop those in here. Okay. Yeah, that's fine. And I'm going to drop a summary on this. Defines a single rule that is accessed by the rules access by a rules access service. Defines a single validation rule that is accessed by a rule access service. It associates a rule definition with an activity context and a failure message. Now, RulesAccess just exposes load rules. And our validator needs RulesAccess RulesAccess our validation engine needs a project reference to RulesAccess.abstractions. There's that. And we can change our to-do. Use the injected RulesAccess component to load the rules and populate the rule sets dictionary. And I'm going to work on this after I go offline here, which is going to be very shortly. And we're going to talk about the things that I do with this tomorrow. Because what I'm going to do when I go offline is I'm just going to create like a hard-coded RulesAccess implementation, probably in either my validation engine tests, like I'm going to create a fake that actually returns some material rules that are defined against that, that test sample class that we have in here. Yeah, the test sample class. So I'm just going to do that to create some hard-coded rules to test. And because what we're doing is we're not testing the rules themselves. We're testing the validation engine and its ability to obtain, manage its own rule sets, and then execute the rule sets as appropriate against our activity contexts, against our subject for given activity contexts, I should say. Executes the set of rules that have been retrieved that apply to the given subject, payload, and activity context. Save. Validation tests. Let's complain in here. Yeah, I know it's failing. All right. And we have a new error message here. I should probably overload that. As a matter of fact, I think I'm gonna. CTOR. Oh, come on. Stop. Get rid of this parameters nonsense. All right. Another productive session. Austin, let me take a look at this website again. Real quick. I'm just going to pop open a new Safari window. Here we go. Where are you? Here it is. What even? .net/hosting. Whoa! That's a lot less soothing than it was, but it certainly is eye-catching. Still kind of like it. Like it's very jarring. Normally I'd consider yellow text on red as a special kind of torture. but that's actually pretty all right. It's certainly bright. Not a choice I would make, but considering your audience, it kind of works, dude. If you really want to screw with somebody, wrap the oh gosh, let's see how this thing's structured. So body, headers. If you wrap your entire collection of sections in a marquee tag as a joke, it does horrible things. Okay, I'm in the inspect element. Where's dev mode? Font family. Press start to play. I assume that's a web font that you downloaded from somewhere because I really like it. I don't want to steal it, but I really like it. I like it a lot. Reload. And how about the page source? Hosting, CSS2. Okay, here's the page source. Let's scooch this. Okay, so you're doing style in here. Reload. Ooh, that's another set of colors that would not be my first choice. But, you know, I'm old. And I'm, you know, my brain immediately goes to technologist and, you know, what would I want? Not necessarily what would somebody who would be looking to rent a Minecraft server want. Yeah, no, this is really cool. The layout is super clean. Your HTML is beautifully tidy. Did with the class marquee and used a marquee content class to create the scrolling effect. Yeah. Yeah, I do that occasionally just as a troll move. Oh, something blew up. .net/hosting. Oh yeah. I do this all the time, like very occasionally when I'm working on like an internal website for a team I'm on or whatever, and I want to play a silly joke on the people that I work with. It's like, hey, check this out, interact with this. Or the QA team really ticks me off about something, I'll just wrap the entire page content in a marquee, and I'll put it up there for like 5 minutes just to hear them scream at me. But yeah, that's fun. That's a lot of fun. All right. I need to cut this out and go do some other things because I do have adult life stuff to do. I'm going to pick up on this tomorrow. I'm going to implement how I think this would work in a hard-coded scenario down here in my validation tests or the validation engine tests library. And then we're going to talk about actually implementing the RulesAccess, maybe against Azure table storage or something interesting like that. So thanks for hanging out, Austin. Thanks for sharing your stuff. That's a really sweet design, dude. I like that a lot. So good work. Keep it up. And, keep me posted on how the Node stuff comes out. I hear a lot of people using Node, and as an old school .NET compiled code on the server guy, I just can't get down with script languages being used to deliver server-side logic. It gives me the creeps for some reason. It's like dipping your lobster in caramel sauce. Oh, dude, you know what? Rest your brain, man. Let your brain take a rest. Go play some damn video games. Kill some creepers. Run away from an Enderman. All of that stuff. Yeah, I know the words. But yeah, you gotta let your mind rest from time to time. Like pulling 10-hour stints. I used to do that. I burned out. It sucked. Do not recommend. 0 out of 5 stars. But yeah, so far so good, man. That's looking really nice. And I will see you all tomorrow. Happy coding. Take care.